Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today, we are going to be studying the Sabbath. Alright? Now, the Sabbath day, well, in Christianity, is often thought of as an Old Testament law. That it's finished and done away. Most Christians, in consequence, view those who keep the Sabbath as trying to be saved by works through the keeping of the Old Testament laws. The question is, are the Christians who believe the Sabbath is finished correct? It is my hope that this study fully and clearly answers that extremely important question. Before we can answer our main question, it is both wise and necessary to understand the history, the spiritual and the physical significance, the symbolic meaning, and the prophetic importance of the Sabbath day. To answer all of these things, we will begin in the beginning. So, looking first in Genesis 1 through 5. What does it say? So, let's turn our books open to Genesis 1. So, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. All right. So, the Lord began creation in the evening during the period of darkness. All right? That he called night, after which he created light, naming that period of time day. God set his system of time as an evening to evening system to comprise a single day. Genesis 1 verse 5 again. God showed this was his system of time consistently throughout the creation week. Genesis 1:5, Genesis 1:8, Genesis 1:13, Genesis 1:19, Genesis 1:23, Genesis 1:31. When the Lord had finally finished all his work of creation in the heavens and in the earth, he rested on the beginning of the seventh day in the evening, because it's evening to evening in God's time and God's system. The seventh day, even by its first mention, distinguishes itself from all the others. From the beginning of the first day to the end of the sixth day, God labored in creating the heavens and the earth and all that is therein. The seventh day, then, stands apart. For instead of beginning or continuing a work, he ends all his work. And we see this right here in Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3. All right. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. All right. So, God not only ends his work in the heavens and in the earth, but he rests from it on the seventh day. So, not only did he not begin a new work or continue a new work, but he rests on that day explicitly, not doing any sort of work at all. All right? So, here then we find that from the first day through the sixth day, there is work and labor, but on the seventh day, there is rest and an end of work. God not only rests on the seventh day, he blesses it and sanctifies it. He does so because in the seventh day, he rested from all his work that he had made. From the first to the sixth, no other day was blessed or sanctified. The facts then are, number one, God's system of time for the seventh as well as the other 6 days, is evening to evening. Genesis 1 verse 5, Genesis 1 verse 8, Genesis 1 verse 13, Genesis 1 verse 19, Genesis 1 verse 23, and Genesis 1 verse 31. Fact number 2. From the first through the 6th day, God labored in his work of creation. Genesis 1 verses 1 through 31, and Genesis 2 verse 1, we see him making the end right there. Number 3, on the 7th day, God ended his work which he had made. Genesis 2 verses 2 through 3 shows that explicitly. Number 4, God rested from all his work on the 7th day, so not only did he end his work, he rested from it. Genesis 2 verse 2 through 3. Number 5, God blessed the 7th day because he rested from his work on the 7th day. Genesis 2 verse 3. God sanctified the 7th day. Sanctified meaning set apart, consecrate, hallowed, declared holy. Number 7, from the 1st through the 6th day, no day is blessed or sanctified by the Lord or given special attention or purpose beyond being a day of labor and work. God showed this directly through his own action. He worked and labored each of the 6 days, and on the 7th day, he rested, he sanctified, he set apart that day. That's his day he set apart. No other day did he set apart in that way. Did he sanctify? Did he hallow? Did he make holy? As we move forward in this study, keep those facts in mind. For the only way to a complete understanding on a matter is to know all the facts in their entirety. Next, we will examine Exodus 16, verses 1 through 36. So, we're not going to read the whole chapter here, but we're going to go through some of the main points. So, open up to Exodus 16. Alright, so again, we're not going to read the whole chapter, but we will go through the main points on this one. So, the whole congregation of the children of Israel were hungry, so they murmured against Aaron and Moses because of it. Exodus 16 verses 1 through 3 state that. The Lord then declares that he will rain bread from heaven for 6 days, and each day the children of Israel will gather the bread to eat. Exodus 16 verses 4 through 5. But the 6th day they will gather twice as much as they gather every other day. Exodus 16 verse 5. The Lord does this to prove the people and see whether they will walk in his law or not. Exodus 16 verse 4. The Lord then fulfills his word and sends them the heavenly bread, which the people called manna. Exodus 16 verses 6 through 15. Moses then delivers them the command to only take every man an omer of manna according to his eating. Exodus 16 verse 16. Every person receiving the like amount. Exodus 16 verses 16 through 18. Moses then commanded them to leave nothing of the manna till morning. The people did not obey, and when morning came, the manna bred worms and stank. Exodus 16 verses 19 through 20. From this point, the congregation, the congregation obeyed and gathered daily of the manna according to his eating for the day. Exodus 16 verse 21. Alright, when the 6th day came, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. Exodus 16 verse 22. Being then commanded to bake and seethe of those omers today, the 6th day, and lay up the remaineth over until the morning of the 7th day. Exodus 16 verse 23 states that. Alright. Through obeying the word of the Lord, they found the next day the manna stored did not stink, neither were any worms in it. Exodus 16 verse 24. Alright. Moses also expands upon why they are to gather twice as much manna on the 6th day for the Lord, For the Lord hath said that the seventh day is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Exodus 16, verse 23. We find then that the seventh day is still considered by the Lord a holy day of rest unto him. And that's all the way from creation. He still considers that his holy day of rest. Beginning of the world and all creation, on the seventh day, he rested and established this day as set apart and holy. And here in Exodus chapter 16, we see him still defining that day that he set apart as holy, as set apart, as his Sabbath day. That's what he says. All right. At this point, we see then no change from the designation of the seventh day as sanctified, blessed, and holy, and a day of rest unto God. Genesis 2, verses 2 through 3, compared with Exodus 16, verse 23. Moses explains more on why it is they need to gather 2 omers the 6th day, saying that on the 7th day there will be no manna in the field to gather. Exodus 16, verses 25 through 26. He tells them that there is no manna to be found on the 7th because the 7th day is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Exodus 16, verses 25 through 26. Moses tells the people that for 6 days they are to gather the manna, but the 7th day is a rest unto the Lord. For the 7th day is the Sabbath day. Exodus 16, verses 25 through 26. We find here the same laws according to the pattern shown in creation. 6 days of work, Genesis 1, 1 through 31, and then Exodus 16, 4 through 5, Exodus 16, 16 through 22, and Exodus 16, 26. And a 7th day of rest, Genesis 2, verses 2 through 3, Exodus 16, 23 through 26, and that this day is holy unto the Lord. Genesis 2, verse 3 shows that, and Exodus 16, verses 23 and 25. You can compare. The same. Some of the people did not listen to Moses on the 7th day, and went out to gather manna, but as Moses told them, there was none to be found. Exodus 16, verse 27. The Lord then spoke to Moses, asking, how long will the people refuse to keep his commandments and his laws? Exodus 16, verse 28. The Lord tells Moses that he has given the Sabbath to them. It is his gift to them. Exodus 16, 29. Because he has given the Sabbath to them, he gives them the bread of 2 days on the 6th day. Exodus 16, 29. These things being given to them, they are commanded then to remain in his place on the 7th day and not go out of it. The people are to rest on the 7th day. Exodus 16, 29 through 30. The facts from Exodus 16 are these. Number 1. The Lord sent bread from heaven to feed the congregation of Israel. You see that all throughout Exodus 16. The children of Israel are to gather manna, bread, every day for food, leaving nothing over until the next morning, and only taking an omer according to the eating of each person. Exodus 16:4, Exodus 16:14 through 21. If any was left over, it would fill with worms and stink. Exodus 16:19 through 20. The children of Israel were to gather twice the amount of manna on the 6th day, and bake and seethe what they would on the 6th day, leaving the remainder until the 7th day. So the 7th day is special in that regard, that it would not have worms and stink. Exodus 16 verses 5, Exodus 16 verses 22 through 24 as well. Number 5, what was left over of the manna on the 7th day did not stink, neither were any worms in it. Exodus 16 verse 24. Showing the necessity of 6 days of work, it's the same pattern as Genesis 1. For 6 days there's work, for 7th day there's rest, and a blessing was attached to it that for that rest, they wouldn't go hungry on that day. The Lord just had them gather twice as much and allowed them to gather twice as much on the 6th day, so that the 7th day they could eat it. That was his blessing to them, so that they could eat and rest on the seventh day and keep the seventh day holy according to the Lord's will and his perfect order. It's his holy day. Number 6, the manna was to be gathered in the morning. If left out, it would melt in the sun's heat. Exodus 16, verse 21. Number 7, the seventh day Sabbath is shown to still be holy. All the way from creation to this point. It's shown to be holy, a day of rest, a rest unto the Lord, number 3, and that's in that chain, and a day distinguished and set apart from the other 6 days. So just like at creation, the first 6 days, work, labor, all in the same manner, always laboring, always working, always creating something or continuing to work. But the seventh day was set apart, sanctified, hallowed, and distinguished from the other 6. In like manner, we see in Exodus 16, the first 6 days, they're the same, except for the 6th day is a preparation day for the 7th, which is a new addition here, and we find in Exodus 16. But all of them are given for labor. That's what they were given for, to labor and work and do all that is necessary in those days. But the 7th day is distinguished and set apart as holy and hallowed by the Lord. It is unique from all the others. And we see that in Exodus 16:23 and Exodus 16:25 through 26. So, number 8. There was no bread to be gathered on the 7th day, the 7th day Sabbath. Instead, the people were commanded to remain in their homes and rest. That's Exodus 16:25 through 30. Now, this specific command was given because they were hard-hearted and went out and tried to get their own and find bread in the fields and gather manna that day, but there was none to be found. And so this addition here is added after we see them doing that. They're commanded to stay in their homes because they were hard-hearted. So the Lord added this to necessitate, to keep it, that they keep the law holy and the Sabbath holy unto God. So they were commanded to stay in their homes and not go out, because otherwise they'd go into the field looking for it and it wouldn't be there, and they wouldn't be resting. They wouldn't be keeping it holy unto God. Number 9. An omer of the manna was to be kept and laid up before the Lord, that the generations would see how the Lord fed the Israelites when he led them out of Egypt. Exodus 16, verses 31 through 36. We find a common theme with these facts where the Sabbath is concerned, as well as the 6 prior days leading up to it. We see 6 days are given for work, exemplified first in the creation week, then by making a necessity... First in creation, then by making it a necessity to go out and gather the manna in the morning before it could melt from the sun's heat. Also in the fact that nothing could be saved from the former days. Making it necessary once again to go out and gather in the morning. So they had to go out and gather more because there wasn't any left. So it necessitated that they go to work. Just like God worked for 6 days, because it melted, because it stank, because of all those things that he attached to it for the gathering for those 6 days, it made it paramount that they had to go out and gather food each day. They had to labor each of the 6 days. He set it up that way specifically to teach them 6 days of labor, and then 1 day of rest. Next we see the seventh day Sabbath still retains its place from creation. It is still regarded as sanctified, blessed, and holy unto the Lord, and not just to man. To rest on the Sabbath and keep it holy is still a command of God. Just as it was sanctified and set apart at creation, it remains sanctified and set apart from the other 6 days in Exodus 16 when the people are led out of Egypt. All right, now let's see here. We're going to look to Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11 specifically, otherwise we'll be here a very long time. So, looking at Exodus 20, let's turn to it in our books here. It's not too far away from 16. All right. We find in verse 8, right here, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. that the commandment of the Sabbath is expressly commanded to be remembered and kept holy. Next in verse 9, we'll read that. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Same principles we've seen so far. We are told that for 6 days we are to labor and do all our work. Then we are told that the seventh day, unlike the other 6, is the Sabbath, rest, of the Lord thy God. So again, the Sabbath is the rest of the Lord thy God. It's his. In the seventh day, we are not to do any work, neither our children, nor our servants, nor our cattle, not even the stranger within our gates is supposed to do any work. The reason for this command of rest that the Lord gives us, is that he created the heavens and earth and all that is in them in 6 days, but on the seventh day, God rested. Because of this, God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it during the creation week. So we'll read that next verse here. We'll read them all together, actually. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Now verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. So, what are the facts from this chapter? What do we have from all the stuff we've studied up until this point? The facts are, number 1, the seventh day Sabbath is commanded to be remembered and kept holy because the Lord hallowed and blessed the